Hello, YouTube, Facebook, whomever, viewers, listeners. We're starting shortly, and don't be shocked. We're back on StreamYard this week just because Andy's a little sick and doesn't want to infect us, so we're not going into the studio. So here we come on StreamYard.
I'm feeling
and we have to really escalate the noise we make so that we'll be heard.
Welcome to Gay USA. I'm Andy Humm.
I'm Ann Northrop, but where are we?
I'm in my bedroom. Where are you?
I refuse to answer on the grounds that it may incriminate.
We're coming to you via StreamYard because I was under the weather yesterday and just getting over a cold, and I felt better not to be in the same studio with folks. So here I am.
And we are eternally grateful.
You're welcome. And let's get to it. It's LGBTQ History Month. And October 11th is National Coming Out Day. And it's also National Bullying Prevention Month. And the best way to do that, of course, is to vote in November.
Okay. And November Election Day is just 5 weeks away, 4.5 probably by the time you see this, November 5th. Or if you're voting early, much sooner.
Mine is in the mail today. I saw it in my inbox.
Okay.
Trump and Vance are campaigning with off-the-charts anti-LGBTQ evangelical groups, shamelessly.
And of course, I assume we're going to start by talking about the vice presidential debate.
We can, yes, although our issues, well, we'll talk about it. In Texas Attorney General, the wicked Ken Paxton, and 22 other GOP attorneys general have intensified their assault on transgender health care.
A drag queen, self-avowed, seeks the Florida House seat from Key West.
You'd think they'd have a chance. LGBTQ leaders are among those calling on indicted New York City Mayor Eric Adams to resign.
It's quite a large chorus at this point. An LGBTQ student group in Iowa, a middle school group, I think, was attacked at a homecoming parade.
A bunch of cowards. Legendary performance artist Justin Vivian Bond was named a MacArthur Genius.
Well deserved. Activists in New York went out last week to protest Uganda's Kill the Gays law.
2 out-gay Broadway legends have died. I'm going to tell you about them: Gavin, Creel, and Ken Page.
Jean Smart hosted the season opening edition of Saturday Night Live. It sort of paid tribute to her lesbian fan base. It was a little snarky, but we'll debate the ins and outs of that.
Well, how about that debate?
Well, I was watching it with a couple of friends who were very depressed at Tim Walz not being sort of sharper and being a little fumbling. But as I said to them, wait till the reviews come out, because we were all shocked at the reviews of Kamala with her debate with Trump, since she started so slowly in that. And sure enough, the assessments this morning, most of them were that, yes, Vance was more self-possessed and strong, but really Walz won on substance points.
If you were actually listening to what they were saying.
Trying.
You know,
but that's the other thing. I think there were probably just 3 of us listening to that. And most people probably didn't watch. And even if they did watch, what they're looking at is the post-game reviews. So I think the headlines that came out of it were that Walz was much more substantive on the issues, tried to be cordial, and Vance just lied throughout it.
They were trying to be Midwestern nice.
Well, Vance did lie, and it was frustrating not to have him caught on that more. And I miss discussions of Trump racism, homophobia, bullying. I would have liked to see the moderators go into that, but they were trying so hard to be, smart people that they really missed all the heart and soul of this campaign.
Our issues didn't come up.
Not at all.
Well, I mean, we're certainly affected by the Affordable Care Act, and we'll talk more about that later. But of course,
we're affected by all of this. But for a campaign that has decided to make its core issue slamming trans people and trying to smear everyone else with the same brush, it was interesting that they did not bring that up.
Well, yes, Trump is now running an ad picturing Kamala Harris with Sam Brinton, the disgraced former, I think, Obama aide or something, who is a trans person and rather and identifiable in the picture. And so they're running on anti-trans stuff. But of course, you only have to look into the recent past. Of course, Vance, as we've told you, had a close friend who was trans, and they got along nicely until he came out against transgender rights recently. And Trump in 2012, when he was running his Miss Universe pageant, welcomed trans contestants into his pageant. And
said Caitlyn Jenner can use any bathroom in Trump Tower that they want to.
Yeah, all that stuff. But again, none of that matters. I mean, come on, the stuff that Trump's running on now, which is really just violence. We're going to have the cops beat people up, and that's going to stop things. I mean, it goes on and on and on and on and on. And they didn't get to any of that in the in the debate. And do you disavow this violence, Mr. Vance?
And these are really important issues that just got overlooked. And then the CBS executives just before the debate said there will be no fact checking. We don't like what ABC did. That was too intrusive. No fact checking.
There was a little, but not much.
Yeah. Then Vance complained about it. Did you hear him say, "I thought there wasn't supposed to be any fact checking"?
Well, we thought you might tell the truth, but you're not. So now let's look at these candidates if we can. Trump has some groupies from the Word of Faith Church in Spindale, North Carolina, who follow him around, and he calls them those beautiful ladies. They look charming enough. They're known for cultish behavior, including screaming at congregants who stray from their orthodoxy. They went after a single mother this way. They beat a 19-year-old congregant for being gay in their quest to save him. And Trump himself is pushing more and more violence. As I've said, that's as the way to solve society's ills. Just beat people up.
Mm-hmm. Yes. And then J.D. Vance is palling around with to call him a far-right preacher is an understatement. This guy wants us all beaten up and dead and worse.
Well, his name is Lance Wallnau, Wallnau, who said that Vice President Harris used witchcraft in her debate with Trump. He calls Trump a flawed but anointed leader. He now holds get out the vote worship rallies in swing states and tells followers that Harris uses the spirit of Jezebel to deceive her voters. No comment from Vance about that. But and you were on the campaign trail this week with Baldwin. Tell us about it.
Well, friends were holding an event for Tammy Baldwin here in New York as part of a fundraising tour she was doing, and I know Tammy a little, and I know the host of the party, so I went and was happy to spend a little time with her. I think she's doing okay these days. She's been up and down in the polls. Sorry. I just sucked on a cough lozenge, so I'm not sure why I'm coughing like this, but I'll try to stop it. Yeah. Tammy gave a very strong speech at this event, and I have seen her be a little softer in the past, and I really appreciated the fact that she was very forthright and strong in her talk about opinions and her talk about her opponent, the rich guy from California. I thought she did a really good job.
Good. And, you know, we of course hope that Vice President Harris wins, but, you know, holding the Senate is less likely. It is possible if we come through and, you know, maybe Texas or Florida or Montana comes back or something like that. But it's very tough. It's a very tough list. We're not picked to win the Senate. And the 2 U.S. senators who are likely to succeed Mitch McConnell as majority leader would not commit to holding confirmation hearings on Harris's Supreme Court nominees. They're talking about John Thune of South Dakota and John Cornyn of Texas. They won't even promise a hearing on her Supreme Court nominees. They are promising obstruction. And that can extend to federal judges, cabinet appointments, sub-cabinet appointments that have to go through the Senate. So as a result, the Harris team is now reaching out to as many Biden cabinet members and sub-cabinet members that they can to say, can you stay on? We're not sure if we're going to be able to replace you if you don't.
Well, why should the Republicans cooperate? They have learned that they can be obstructionists like that, and there is no punishment for them.
Well, I'm just pointing this out to the American people, because if you do want government to function, you better vote Democrat this year. I'm serious. If you want the government to
Definitely.
You know, J.D. Vance keeps saying, "Oh, you were in power all this time. Why didn't you do it?" Now she does. She Walz and Harris. They of course bring up that Trump blocked the immigration bill, but the Republicans block everything. They don't let anything get through. So
well, right. There's a lot more that the Democrats could be saying on that, including the fact that Harris is not the president of the United States, and they just have transferred all power to her in their rhetoric, which is completely inappropriate. But here's what I read this week that scared me. We have talked a lot all year about Project 2025 and the Heritage Foundation having written this 900-page plan for what they're going to do when the Republicans take over the government. And a lot of it's very concrete, but people have sort of looked at it and said, well, what? And it includes things like, we're going to get rid of all the Democratic appointees in the government. We're going to clean it out. We're going to start over and just put our people in. And I think people sort of say, oh, come on. Well, this week's report is that the Heritage Foundation has filed hundreds of Freedom of Information Act requests, whatever they are, for information about current government employees by name, and they are seeking information for who has talked about diversity, equity, and inclusion, who has talked about pronouns, who has talked about LGBTQ stuff, and they are making a specific list of government employees who have had any tangential relationship to any of these issues, and they are going to get rid of all of them.
Yep.
They're working on it. This is not just, oh, maybe we'll do something when we get in. No, they are working on it.
Biden hasn't even gotten rid of Louis DeJoy in the post office after 4 years. His
job is probably safe. I think he's okay. But it's tremendously scary stuff. And one of our viewers sent me a note about something they saw on television, a political ad for Trump or Vance or both or whatever in Texas. And it was one of these heinous anti-trans ads.
Yeah.
And so the viewer wrote to the TV station and said, you can't run this stuff. It is hate speech and discriminatory, and I'm going to turn you in if you don't get this stuff off the air. And the TV station said, well, you'll have to take that up with the Federal Communications Commission, because the law is that we have to run all political ads without exception and without editing. And the viewer said, come on, this is illegal stuff they're saying. and it's very violent, and it's going to provoke violence.
Well, exactly. And this anti-trans stuff is when they're doing this, it's like it's to distract you, and it's almost all they got. And it didn't really work. It didn't work the last time in 2022. They spent tens of millions, if not hundreds of millions of dollars on these kinds of ads. It didn't work.
Well, I hope it doesn't work this time, but the issue has become more prominent and more concrete, and they've succeeded in scaring people about, trans girls on girls' softball teams and
men in girls' restrooms.
Exactly. So it's completely a fear-mongering campaign. It's completely a lie, but they know how to push lies relentlessly.
Yes. But there was a more sedate and sober forum on the state of the nation, and a Wisconsin mom at the forum said what she really fears for her children. Let's go to the videotape.
Tell us your name and where you're from.
Hi, I'm Danielle, and I'm from Elm Grove. I grew up in Tosa. I also went to Marquette. We had a lot of Marquette alums around here. And I have 3 young kids. I have a 7-year-old, an almost 5-year-old, and a 2-year-old. And I think one of the things that we haven't really addressed is what will keep our kids safe. We've heard a lot of rhetoric about, I'm afraid of seeing my kids seeing a drag queen, which I have taken my kids to drag queen story hour. It is like going to any other princess party. Like, there is nothing sexual about a drag event that is geared towards children. If you would take your kids to see Peter Pan the musical on Broadway, Mary Martin played Peter Pan in the 1950s. There is nothing scary about it. What is scary is the idea that I think every single day when I drop my kids at school, will I see them come home, or will someone come into the school and shoot them? And I also think, as my kids get older, will they be made to feel othered because people were afraid of their self-expression, and so then they will harm themselves? My dad died of suicide about 11 years ago. Thank you. And he was very easily able to access a gun in this state, despite having a history of mental illness. So when I think of things that are scary, when I put my kids to bed at night, I'm not afraid of a drag queen story hour. I'm afraid of what's actually going to happen to them. I am afraid of what their planet will look like in the next 20 years because we're not taking care of it. And I think that the rhetoric that we have that makes these things seem scary because they're hot button issues are, and I will say, primarily on the right. I am a liberal person, I am a Democrat, but I do see a lot of different news sources, and I am not seeing the type of fear-mongering in any other news source than particularly right-wing news sources, and it is causing us to not really focus on the issues that are going to keep our kids safe.
Don't know what she's worried about. Senator Vance has said all we have to do is fortify the windows of the schools. That was his answer to school shootings.
Yes, I know. She's right, and she's tremendously moving and eloquent about it. And I'd like to see that turned into an important ad that's broadcast all over the place.
So we can win Wisconsin. Well, let's move on a little bit. I don't want to let this week go by without wishing a happy birthday, 100th birthday, to Jimmy Carter. He's hanging in there so he can vote for Kamala Harris. He was a one-term president, elected in '76.
Because he was too concerned about human rights.
Well, he didn't get us into a war over the Iran hostage crisis, which a lot of people were agitating for. He granted amnesty to draft evaders. He gave back the Panama Canal. He established departments of energy and education. He created the Superfund law to clean up toxic waste. And he was the first administration to allow gay leaders to meet in the White House. He wasn't there. This was not that meeting. This was earlier, where he met with Harvey Milk at a fundraiser. Harvey scraped together $100 in 1976 so he could shake hands with Jimmy Carter and talk to him. But before that fundraiser, Jimmy Carter declared I am for the what was then the federal gay rights bill, what we call the Equality Act. He said he separated his evangelical faith from his politics. I told you during that campaign, I met him in '76 when I was working for NBC, and he's waiting to go on because he won the primary. He's going to win the nomination. And I said, Governor, I hope you'll do okay by the gay people. And he said, well, okay, I will. And, did he do that much? I don't think he heard us. He came out against the Briggs Initiative when he was president in 1978, although Ronald Reagan did too later. But he had this unsurpassed post-presidency, and he's still alive.
Yes, I hope he's voted early.
I told you, mine.
Although his grandson says that he's getting stronger, not weaker. So something about surviving.
I don't think anybody's been in hospice this long.
Yeah. Well, you never know.
Yeah.
All right.
Well, in Florida, we told you how they banned all mention of sex and sex education. This is also the state that bans all mention of climate change and what used to be called science courses in schools, but are now just DeSantis indoctrination sessions. And their ignorance didn't stop the devastating Hurricane Helene that has killed now more than 175 people and caused billions in property damage.
Yeah, it's a great tragedy, and people are scrambling to do anything they can, and just
it's hitting places that have never been hit by this kind of stuff before.
Yes, and I worry along with, of course, being concerned about people's lives and homes and everything else. The federal government does not have a magic wand to wave over this. And will people in North Carolina or other states blame the federal government in the election?
Well, Trump would like them to. DeSantis is also misusing public agencies to try to defeat the Amendment 4 in Florida, which would prohibit government interference with the right to abortion before viability, about 24 weeks, which is the Roe standard, not the 6-week limit that DeSantis imposed. And he's been sending law enforcement to intimidate voters who signed the petitions to get this on the ballot. He's also using a state-run agency for healthcare administration to advertise that the initiative threatens women's safety, spending millions on these ads. The ACLU is suing over that. Now, this initiative needs 60% to pass down there.
Yes. And Dr. Rachel Levine of the federal government, Health and Human Services, the highest ranking out trans official in the federal government, was in Florida recently to speak, and anti-trans activists went and yelled at her and interrupted her speech. Now, theoretically, I'm not against interrupting the speeches of officials. I've done it myself, but in this case, there's no reason to do that.
Right.
And it was not a good thing.
And Trump put a picture of her and Harris in one of his ads. Also in Florida, the state House of Representatives district, this is for the state, that includes Key West, and they're in southern Florida, is held by a Republican who is being challenged by Michael Travis, also known as Erica Rose, a drag artist affiliated with the Gay Business Guild of Key West, running to counter the DeSantis GOP attacks on trans rights and women's rights that Republicans use to distract us, she says, from housing crisis, environmental crisis, said even if not elected, as long as one person who feels they don't belong sees that a drag queen from Key West is fighting for them to live their truth, it makes a difference. Travis is also open about having HIV.
And makes a difference to non-trans people who become more acclimated to the idea of trans people as human beings living in society and doing things like running for office.
Yeah. Yes. And in D.C., a good story, although it took long enough, a trans woman was awarded $930,000 for workplace discrimination at McDonald's. This was an 11-year legal fight for Diana Portillo Medrano. She had reported the harassment to the D.C. Office of Human Rights and then was fired. And they used the pretext, well, you're an undocumented, so you're out, even though that's most of whom they hire there.
Well, let's move to Virginia for a couple of less happy stories. An anti-trans teacher there was awarded $575,000 in a settlement. She had been fired. Wait a minute, was it she or he? Anyway, the teacher was fired for refusing.
French teacher,
Peter
Vlaring.
For refusing to acknowledge a trans student by their new pronouns. The student has a legal name change, and the teacher refused to respect that, claiming religious freedom for themselves.
And free speech.
Free speech. And won their lawsuit, or got settled the lawsuit for $575,000.
Well, Governor Youngkin down there ordered teachers to use students' legal names and pronouns associated with biological sex.
Yeah, but this is the trans student's legal name, which is not being respected. But my
the teacher says, "I'll use the name. I just won't use the pronouns, because then I'd get out of favor with my lord."
Well, would his lord respect the new name?
It's you know what? It's tremendous lack of compassion and politeness on the part of these people.
Well, and we have a nominee for candidate of the week, and that is the House candidate, the Republican House candidate in Virginia, who is a single man, but is doing campaign ads with a neighbor woman and her kids, making it look like they're his family. He's done print ads
family
and video ads.
Wow. Well, it's like when Ed Koch was running for mayor. He grabbed the hand of Bess Meyerson and paraded around with her.
Yeah, but he didn't claim to be married to her or to have kids by her.
No, he was trying to get over the
I know.
Gay inference.
No, okay. So I guess there's a long history of this.
Yes. Let's talk about what the Republican attorneys general are doing, led by the wicked Ken Paxton in Texas. They're suing over a federal rule change that added gender dysphoria to the list of disabilities protected from discrimination under Section 504 of the Rehabilitation Act of 1973 and the Americans with Disabilities Act of 1990. So these AGs are arguing that the rule exceeds HHS authority, since gender identity disorders weren't included when these laws were enacted, both in Republican administrations, by the way, with the Democratic Congress. So there are many updates to the rule that made in May, but this is the only one that they object to.
Shocking.
LGBTQ plus affirming placement for youth, and Paxton is also suing over the requirement that states prove LGBTQ affirming placement for youth in foster care. So,
yeah, no, he's very in favor of having LGBTQ hating foster parents bring in LGBTQ foster kids. Right. And meanwhile, in a different suit, 22, that first one is Ken Paxton and 16 other attorneys general. And a coalition of 22 attorneys general is threatening the American Academy of Pediatrics. They claim they're violating consumer protection laws by approving trans care. They have no legal basis for their threat, but they're just into the bullying.
They said they're violating consumer protection laws.
Yeah.
Well, since Texas denies gender changes on driver's licenses since last month, they've directed the Department of Public Service employees to contact an internal email address anytime someone with a court order requested a gender ID change, giving the individual's name and ID number. So the public got a hold of the email address, and they've been flooding it with complaints about the policy change and spam. In 700 pages of emails, there was only one actual report of someone seeking to make a gender change marker. some of the spam was creative, signing up the department for Queer Me Now, a gay porn blog, but mostly people were calling Texas out for this is fascism, compiling a secret list of trans people. So keep up the rebellion, Texas. It's part of your heritage.
Let's move to the Supreme Court.
Well, yes. Go ahead.
Well, a couple of things. Ron Wyden, Senate Democrat from Oregon, has proposed some new laws to improve the Supreme Court, since we seem stuck in a gridlock of right-wing nonsense.
It's a sweeping reform, and obviously it doesn't have any chance of passing now, but it articulates what we need. Adding 6 justices, requiring justices to undergo audits, removing roadblocks to the confirmation process. He would each president over 12 years would nominate justices in the first and third year of their terms. It would require a 2/3 vote of the High Court and Circuit Court appeals to overturn a law that was passed by Congress. It would require a vote on a nominee in a committee within 180 days. It would expand the federal circuits from 13 to 15. They've been expanded. We started with 6. That's what Washington had, and he had 6 Supreme Court justices. These are arbitrary numbers, although they have something to do with population. So, and it would allow a 2/3 vote of the court to force a fellow or sister justice to recuse themselves from a case, and also to make them reveal how they vote on the shadow docket, this mysterious process that they use to kill things. So that's good. And Rhode Island Senators Sheldon Whitehouse and Catherine Cortez Masto of Nevada have reintroduced their bill to give Congress greater latitude to check Supreme Court rulings.
Now, it is important to keep in mind when thinking about things like this, what would happen if the right wing continues to have power and more power, and would any of this redound to their benefit, and make sure that these are neutral enough that what it succeeds in doing is breaking the gridlock rather than tilting to one side or the other. And I think this is a pretty neutral set of proposals. But meanwhile, in the Senate, Senators Cruz and Lindsey Graham are pounding judicial nominees currently on their support of the Equality Act.
Well, one of them had been in Congress, and he voted for it.
Yeah. So that, of course, is Satan's work, and they will work to keep that person off the bench for being such a heinous human being.
And they can't do that now because Democrats have the votes, and that's why we need to elect Democrats in Texas and in Nebraska. Well, actually, it would be an independent in Texas and Nebraska who's got a close shot there to get rid of the Republican, and maybe hold on to John Tester. And don't let that Hogan get elected in Maryland. What are you thinking?
I think Marylanders are seeing through that. You know, he appears to be a nice guy. He's a lot more right wing than he lets on. And I think Maryland is kind of hip to that. So I know.
Hope so.
Whatever. The point is, we are not firmly in winning space for any of these people, and don't take anything for granted, and get out there and vote and register your friends and do all of that.
I'm going to vote today because I see my ballot's coming today. New York City Mayor Eric Adams, you've heard about this. It's a national story that he's been indicted. And, you know, he didn't have much LGBTQ support before his indictment on fraud charges. He started his administration in 2022 by appointing a whole raft of anti-LGBTQ bigots. We protested that. And he just said, oh, they've changed. And we have to forgive them. I said, how they've changed? Let's talk. Can we talk to them? No, you can't talk to them. I mean, this is how he operates. It's all bluster and lies. And so almost all the elected LGBTQ officials in the city and the clubs are calling on him to resign, which he says he won't. And he also said
Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez wants him to resign.
She wanted him to resign before.
Gary Nadler wants him to resign.
Yes.
It's getting quite widespread. And today, as we tape, he was back in court, and the prosecutors were saying, we're preparing more charges to throw at you.
Absolutely. He's always been associating with rogues and grifters, and it's disgraceful. But he says he welcomes the support being offered by former President Trump. Shame on you, Eric.
Yeah, exactly. And if you wonder about the impact of some of these anti-trans laws and rhetoric and everything, the Trevor Project is out with a new large survey of like 30,000 people, and have found that anti-LGBTQ laws and rhetoric are producing a great uptick in suicide attempts by LGBTQ youth. Very depressing news and utterly predictable.
Absolutely. And let's go to Marion, Iowa. The homecoming parade there included the Linn-Mar School District Gay Straight Alliance, called Spectrum, who say we're used to being ridiculed, but this year someone threw an open box cutter at them, and 10 plus kids were shouting slurs at them. We have a picture of that?
We have a video.
Yelling things like, I'm a homophobe, or I don't want your candy. Just vile.
The Linn-Mar School District says an incident during a homecoming parade is now part of an ongoing investigation. According to the district, a few people ridiculed and threw items at one of the parade entries, the Linn-Mar Spectrum.
Yeah, Spectrum is the Gay Straight Alliance at the Linn-Mar High School. And what happened during the parade yesterday has galvanized a wave of support for students in that LGBTQ plus group.
KCRG TV9's Jackson Valenti has been following the response to what happened. He is joining us now live in the studio. Jackson?
Yeah, Jim, I talked to a Linn-Mar parent who said the students who are part of Spectrum are used to being ridiculed. But yesterday, she says they were put in danger because of items like this, an open box cutter that was thrown at the group.
I cannot fathom being a child going to homecoming and not feeling safe.
Jennifer Pitkin is the mother of Ava, a student who marched with Spectrum, a student-run LGBTQ plus group at Linn-Mar High School. While Ava and the other students were marching at Linn-Mar's homecoming parade, Pitkin says a group of 10 or more kids started shouting slurs at them, and she says somebody threw this box cutter at the students. It didn't hit anybody, but it solidified Pitkin's fears of hostility against students at Pride events.
I want you to stay at home. I want you to stay home. I want you to never go to a Pride parade again. My kid and these kids are not. They would not be held down. I promise you that they would not be held down because...
After the knife was thrown, the students didn't leave. They kept marching.
They chose to make a statement and saying, we're here, we are to be valued, and we're in our community, and we're not going anywhere.
Pitkin said even though she was worried for her daughter's safety, she's proud of the group's decision to keep going. She said many LGBTQ students face harassment and ridicule all the time, and she hopes this situation can be remembered as standing up against adversity.
But there's a lot of other kids that are affected that don't speak up, and this is their norm.
After the incident, Linn-Mar Schools released this statement, saying in part, this behavior is unacceptable and does not reflect the values of our district. The school district said it is working with Marion Police in the investigation into that incident. In the studio, Jackson Valenti, KCRG TV9 News.
They kept marching.
Yes. And in Marshall, Minnesota, a straight principal of a middle school was fired because she put up pride flags and helped start a gay straight alliance in the school. And she was removed from her position. She's still in the system, but yes, she's not the principal. The principal still working in the school system. And so she filed a claim of discrimination. There she is. And she was rejected by the court, which said that school officials are allowed to be hostile to her views, and that they were not discriminating against her in Title IX because she's a straight woman, cis woman, and that she doesn't have free speech rights in her job. Tell it to the teacher who claimed free speech rights and got a big settlement in Virginia.
So that's Mary Kay Thomas. The judge, Schultz, was a George Bush appointee. He's the chief judge of the district. He was a founding associate dean at the right-wing University of St. Thomas School of Law, this Thomas More stuff, which is all funded by the right wing.
Depressing. All right, let's
go on.
More sad news. In Palm Springs, California,
yes.
Eduardo Joel, 58 years old, who was one of the hosts of Extreme Makeover Home Edition, was stabbed to death by the alleged perpetrator, Richard Gonzalez, 34. A very violent murder. Details to come.
The police say the men were, quote, associates, whatever that means. So it's really unclear about the nature of the relationship.
Eduardo was an out gay man.
Right.
Was this a boyfriend? Was it a pickup? Was it something else? We don't know. But he was a prominent and beloved person and has been murdered.
And in Roseville, California, 3 hate crime suspects. They went to the store. One of them went to the register, tore down a rainbow flag at Blaze Pizza restaurant, and then they got into a fight. They assaulted the workers. It was captured on phone video. One employee had to be taken away in an ambulance, hospitalized briefly with a concussion and head trauma, and police are pursuing the suspects.
And in the continuing saga of hypocrisy, in Louisiana, the founder and head of the Lakeside Christian Academy, Pastor John Raymond, a MAGA candidate for office, it turns out has been convicted of repeated child abuse and cruelty. He's an anti-LGBT guy who talks about, how crazy we are, and he's out there cruelly abusing children.
Well, and, Donald Trump cruelly abuses women and has been convicted of it and may be the next president if we don't stop him. We told you about last week how Qasim Omar, who was shot in 2022, died of the wounds in Columbus, Ohio on September 6th. And we are going to include in our email a video of her telling her story. Just go to our website, gayusatv.org, sign up for our emails, and we give you these extras.
And part of that is about how her family could not come visit from Kenya refugee camp before she died. And in New York last week, activists were out protesting the anti-LGBTQ law in Uganda. They went during UN week, there's Amanda Lugg, and I know who that is. The name will come to me. They're outside the Uganda mission for a demonstration. They want the World Bank to stop financing Uganda. They promised to stop when the law was passed, but now they're about to restart financing of Uganda.
We told you how the General Theological Seminary, Episcopalian, and right here in Chelsea, down the block from us, planned to lease a good portion of the school to the School of Sacred Music, founded by a right-wing anti-LGBTQ funder. And that raised alarms. There was a big community meeting. Somebody stood up in the meeting and said, I think we can find somebody else to do this. And somebody else stood up and said, well, and they got together and they found out that Vanderbilt University from Tennessee was seeking space in New York because it was founded by a New Yorker, essentially, Cornelius Vanderbilt. You know him as the ancestor of Anderson Cooper. Anyway, they've signed a 99-year lease and everybody's happy again.
Yes. Solutions are possible.
There's a semi-gay angle to the Sean Combs Diddy scandal that's gotten him indicted. A male sex worker has come forward with a videotape of one of Diddy's freak-offs, drug-fueled orgies that got Diddy arrested for sexual abuse, illegal drugs, and sex trafficking. Diddy was allegedly orchestrating sex between male and female sex workers while he watched and pleasured himself. Diddy's lawyer said, we can't get so puritanical to think that somehow sex is a bad thing, because if it was, there would be no people. 120 people are set to sue Diddy over sexual abuse Victims range from age 9 to 38, 60 men and 60 women. And some of the suits are going to include household names. Diddy is accused of grooming rapper Usher and Justin Bieber.
The 9-year-old was a boy who said he was sexually abused by Diddy. We'll see where these stories turn out, but it's a terrible picture. All right.
We've lost this week.
Yes. Ken Page.
Ken Page has died at the age of 70. A native of St. Louis, he joined the cast of The Wiz in 1975 as the Lion. He soon originated the role, I saw him in this, of Old Deuteronomy in Cats. And, I can remember he would welcome
You're going to admit you saw Cats?
I saw somebody brought me to see Cats Standing Room when it opened. It was the thing to see. And afterwards, you were allowed to go up on the stage. And I remember meeting this old man. He was about 28 years old at the time. Anyway, he won a Drama Desk Award for Outstanding Actor in a Musical and Ain't Misbehavin' in 78. Harvey Fierstein met him there, and they became friends. And Harvey cast him as his best friend in the movie version of Torch Song Trilogy. He played drag artist Marcia Dimes, and Charles Pierce there played Birth of a Nation. But he's also fondly remembered as the voice of Oogie Boogie in The Nightmare Before Christmas in the movies. He toured the country with his cabaret act Page by Page, and people are really, he was a beloved figure.
He was in Showgirls, too, the movie.
Right.
And another Broadway star died at a much younger age. Gavin Creel died at the age of 48.
There he is in his Olivier Award-winning role in the London production of The Book of Mormon.
Rare Cancer won a Tony for his role in Hello, Dolly. He was in Hair. Book of Mormon was his longstanding thing. He leaves a partner, Alex Temple Ward. He wrote a memoir called Walk On Through, Confessions of a Museum Novice, and turned it into a show about getting to know the Metropolitan Museum. I'm sorry I missed that. I bet it was great.
He was, known as a superior singer with a sunny tenor from the time he starred in the original production of Thoroughly Modern Millie with Sutton Foster. He got his first Tony nomination as the straight son of the gay couple in La Cage aux Folles in 2004. He was a native of Findlay, Ohio. He was a champion of LGBTQ rights. He co-founded the group Broadway Impact to support same-sex marriage back when we needed that. And he said, growing up in the Methodist Church left him with scars, and he worked his whole life to deprogram the pain. And it gave him an aversion to organized religion. But he said he learned growing up taught him how to be a team player. So he said, you're part of something. You're not the something.
Well, now we want to celebrate the very much alive and kicking Justin Vivian Bond, who has been given one of the so-called MacArthur Genius Grants, $800,000 over 5 years. Shocked, we say. There's Vivian, who goes by they, them, and is trans, non-binary.
61 years old.
Legendary performer. Probably first legendary for their performances with Kenny Millman as Kiki and Herb, a very dissolute, older, alcohol-soaked cabaret act.
Ladies and gentlemen.
Kenny on the left. I've seen many of their shows. They're just unbelievably hilarious and moving and terrific. Vivian is a genius. And a pioneer on so many levels, and now doing more, a wide range of performances, including, we talked about their opera appearance in Germany last year, and a lot of cabaret performances, often at Joe's Pub, but all over the place.
Well, cited by the MacArthur people for working in the cabaret tradition and leaving cultural critique and an ethic of care into performances, weaving cultural critique and an ethic of care into performances that center queer joy.
If you ever have a chance to see Justin Vivian Bond run, do not walk to a box office to
credited with inspiring a younger generation of trans artists and performers.
You can probably find their Kiki and Herb performances on YouTube, I'm going to guess, and you should watch. I don't think we have time for the MacArthur Foundation video, but if you go on their website, MacArthur Foundation, you can see the slightly biographical video of Vivian and a ton of other stuff on YouTube, and we'll link to it.
We'll link to it in our email.
Yeah. All right, moving on to international news. There's actually a very new headline in international news. The country of Georgia, the president, has refused to sign the anti-LGBTQ law that was passed by the parliament. The bill goes back to the parliament. They may have the power and the will to pass it anyway over the refusal of the president, but that's pretty cool of the president to refuse to sign it.
It is. Salome Zurabichvili. And elections not going our way too much these days, but in the Brandenburg state in Germany, the center-left Social Democrats of Chancellor Olaf Scholz just barely held off a win for the far-right Alternative for Germany, which is dedicated to rolling back LGBTQ rights. The far right won, these are in state elections in Thuringia 3 weeks ago and almost in Saxony. So they're gaining ground. In Spain, the right-wing party, we learned, is now funded by a Hungarian bank linked to Viktor Orban. Surprise, surprise. They were already funding Le Pen in France.
The European Court of Human Rights has told Poland that they must recognize same-sex couples, which is an advance. And
I thought they were going to do that with this new government.
Well, evidently they're dragging their feet because the Court of Human Rights has ordered them to do it. And we told you last week that the British Medical Association had condemned the Cass report that supposedly said that care for trans kids was questionable at best. We thought the British Medical Association was very brave to do that. Well, it inspired a lot of backlash, and they have in fact received so much backlash on their assessment that they have backed off to a neutral position. Yeah, exactly.
So much for science.
Yeah. Politics, much more important. All right. AIDS news.
Well, in the Walls Vance debate, Vance said that Trump saved Obamacare, which was a 10 Pinocchio lie. But the real threat to Obamacare is going to come from these lawsuits that are now going to be filed that the Supreme Court got rid of the Chevron doctrine. Try to stay with this. They basically said agencies can't dictate all these regulations. We, the courts, will decide what's right and wrong. So all these corporations and the healthcare industry and many other places are gearing up to dismantle all those regulations that have been imposed by federal agencies.
We've been telling you in the last few weeks about the drug lenacapavir as a new preventive for HIV, 2 injections a year, no more daily pill. And this is flying through with such success fast that Gilead, the manufacturer, released an announcement saying that they had licensed 6 generic pharmaceutical manufacturers to produce the drug in generic form for distribution or sale to very poor and low income countries at no profit to Gilead. Now, this all sounds great, but this is Gilead, for one thing, trying to corner the market for this drug before others come along to supersede them. And it hasn't gotten FDA approval yet. They've applied for approval of it as both a preventive for HIV and a sort of last-ditch treatment for HIV for people who have run out of other possibilities. So we're going to keep a close.
You get it twice a year.
Yes, we're going to keep a close eye on that. And it's superficially good news, but there with Gilead, one always wonders.
Entertainment news.
Yes.
Actor and comedian Rebel Wilson, 44, has married her partner, Ramona, the founder of a sustainable...
Ramona Agrama. That's Ramona on the left, Rebel on the right.
Right. They had a destination wedding in Porto Cervo in Sardinia, Italy. They went public with their romance in 2022, got engaged last year. Wilson had a daughter, Royce, by a surrogate in November of 2022, and they've been raising her together.
Yeah, congratulations to them. And congratulations to Jenna Lyons, former chief executive of J.Crew. She's the tall one on the left. She is back for the second season of The Real Housewives of New York City, which no one, including her, can believe she's on. But she's very popular there. And she was on Andy Cohen's Watch What Happens Live show this week, last night as we're taping. And he said, you have a girlfriend, don't you? And she said, yes. And he said, well, are you going to get married? And she said, well, maybe I don't need to. And he said, what? And she said, maybe I'm already married. And it turns out that she and her now wife, Cass Bird, did get married, and congratulations to them.
So Gene Smart was the host of SNL, Saturday Night Live, at the start of the 50th season, and integrated into her opening that lesbians are obsessed with her, and has had a lot of gay women fans, and said, apparently, I do for Hacks as well. The show for which she just, Hacks is the show for which she just won an Emmy. She noted her first play was an all-lesbian cast back in LA back in 83 by Jane Chambers last summer at Bluefish Cove.
As you heard here first last week, as we unearthed that, I thought the Saturday Night Live mention was a little snarky. She, lesbians are obsessed with me. Well, can't people like her? And
there's a lot of gay male fans too.
Sure. Look, there are gay men on the show.
I believe.
Her colleague on the show is bisexual in real life and on the show. There's a lot of LGBTQ content in Hacks. I've always liked Hacks. I've always liked Gene Smart. There was just a little touch of snark I wasn't crazy about in that.
Fanatical?
Fanatical is the documentary, The Catfishing of Tegan and Sarah, which we mentioned last week, coming to Hulu on October 18th. I watched the trailer. It's pretty scary. It really is a very serious documentary about how their identities were stolen and how they were harassed and attacked. I'm looking forward to seeing it, but maybe through, half closed eyes.
And not much of a gay angle to the death of Maggie Smith, other than, again, as somebody I loved as a performer. But one of her Oscars was for California Suite, where she played an actress who lost an Oscar, but she's married to a character played by Michael Caine, who was bisexual. It was a rare mainstream depiction in 1978.
And HBO's Somebody Somewhere with Bridget Everett returns for season 3 on October 27th. And DC, sorry?
Are we out of time?
Almost. DC is doing World Pride next spring, May to June. We'll see you sooner than that next week.
I hope to be back in the studio.
Yeah, bye.
Oh, we have to go to another
link.
Yes.